Motocross. Jumps that test your nerve and skill. Whoops that test your conditioning. And hairpins that can test your appetite for hay bales. Motocross isn't for the weak rider or bike.
You know, there's nothing like winning, even if that means finishing in front of one other rider. The bottom line to a rider is putting in the best performance possible and having a good time doing it. That's what riding and racing is all about.
And this is where winning begins. The difference between taking home the trophy and going DNF for the day is maintaining a bike to peak competitive standards.
Hi, my name's Brian Lunnis. You can't win if your bike doesn't work. It's that simple. And maintenance is the key. Before every race, I go completely through Rick's bike. And that's why we're here, to show you how to keep your bike race ready. Whether you've just gotten your bike or you've had it for years, your CR Owner's Manual and your CR Service Manual are the best things you can use to prepare for a race. They have some of the best information on the CR. Use it.
Race-ready maintenance is an ongoing process between races and between motos. The process begins before practice and continues from there. It's important to maintain your bike systematically. That way you won't overlook anything.
Before you wash the bike, check for stains that could warn you of a possible gasket or seal leak. Missing these could cost you a win.
It's a good idea to cover the air filter before you wash the bike. Water will carry dirt through the filter and into the engine. When you use a car wash to clean your bike, there are some areas you shouldn't point the nozzle at. Those include the wheel bearings, the ProLink linkage, the steering head bearings, and the swing arm bearings. And be careful with the decals too. High water pressure can take them right off. Some racers use a rust inhibitor to protect their bikes from rust and corrosion. That can help the engine, the drive chain, linkage, and sprockets, but avoid spraying the compound on brake discs or pads because it can affect braking performance. After washing the bike, start the engine and bring it up to normal operating temperature until the cylinder is warm to the touch. Now is a good time to drain and refill the transmission oil. Be sure to check the old oil for metal particles and any signs of water. Then remove the ignition cover. You may see some water here. That's okay. The bike should be left uncovered with the ignition cover open so it can dry out completely. If this rubber gasket is cracked or broken, replace it before putting the cover back on to reduce the amount of dirt that gets into the flywheel. Every 3 or 4 races, take the ignition rotor off using a rotor puller. Clean out any dust and dirt. The timing is factory set and won't change. Just make sure that when you reinstall the rotor, the keyway in the rotor is lined up with this key. And when you install the rotor, be sure to tighten the rotor nut to the specified torque. You'll find information on the rotor puller and other tools you'll need in the service manual. The cleaning sequence for the air cleaner is important. First, wash the filter in solvent. Never use gasoline, and make sure not to stress the foam as you do. Follow the solvent immediately with a washing in hot soapy water. Then allow all the water to evaporate. The filter must be dry. And then oil the filter with Honda Line air filter oil and let it dry out again.
Here's what you want to see when you finish oiling your air cleaner. nice even color. Here's one that's unacceptable, uneven color. If the oil is uneven, smooth it out until you see a nice even color. Here's a tip. Work the oil into the filter while it's in one of these plastic bags. It'll save on oil, keep your hands clean, and keep the filter protected.
Taking a pre-oiled air filter to the races in a sealable plastic bag will save you time on race day. Before installing the filter, coat the sealing edge with grease to keep dirt out.
Here's another tip. It's important to use silicone seal here, where the airbox boot connects to the airbox. This prevents dirt from getting past the air filter. Dirt in this area can wear out an engine in a day. Use your silicone sealer here, on both sides of this seal, on each half, to keep dirt from being sucked in.
The drive chain is tensioned correctly when there is 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of play in the chain at its tightest point. That is when the axle, the swing arm pivot, and the counter shaft are all in line. If the drive chain is too tight here, it will wear out fast and could damage the transmission bearing. After you set the chain tension at the tightest point once, reattach the shock and mark the frame tube for easy reference at the track. Now, check your chain alignment by sighting down the top of it. If the chain is misaligned, it can wear itself and the sprockets out more quickly. Adjust it with the chain adjusters as described in your owner's manual.
Here's a tip. Use a tape to measure from the swing arm pivot bolt to the axle edge on both sides for best accuracy.
Tension the drive chain by placing a screwdriver under the chain and pulling back on the wheel. This will tighten the chain and pull the axle tight against the chain adjusters. Then, tighten the axle nut to specified torque. Finally, tighten both chain adjusters against the axle and tighten the lock nuts. Now, from underneath, sight along the lower run of the chain and make sure it's centered in the chain guide.
Some people overlook this, but don't. Check the alignment of the chain in the guide. If it is bent, straighten it out. And remember, if you change your sprocket size, you have to change the position of your chain guide, right here. Check your owner's manual for details.
On the track, wheels and brakes take a tremendous pounding. That's why it's important to check for the trueness of wheels and discs frequently. Spokes will get loose quickly on a new bike and then seat in as the bike gets older, requiring less adjustment. With a motorcycle on a work stand, spin the wheel and check for warpage and wobble in the rim. If the rim spins true, fine. But even if you don't see wobble, check to see if the wheel spokes have loosened during the ride. If spokes are loose, work your way around the rim with a spoke wrench, tightening those spokes that have unequal torque a little at a time. If you continue to have wobble in the rim, even after tightening the spokes, the rim itself may be bent and should be checked by a Honda dealer technician.
It only takes a second to check the rear disc and pads, but this simple check could save an expensive disc replacement if the pads are worn to the metal. Using a straight edge will tell you quickly what kind of wear you have on the rear disc.
It's important to check the rear disc, especially after racing in mud or deep sand. On the brake pads, if you see wear down to the indicator, it's time to replace the pads. Weekly maintenance should be part of your ongoing race preparation, with the front forks an important part of the motorcycle to maintain. The fork should have the fluid changed after 2 to 5 hours of practice or racing to reduce wear and maintain good damping action. Loosen the top pinch bolts before taking the fork cap out of the fork. The pinch bolts act as a clamp and must be loosened or the clamping force will bind the threads of the fork cap. Remove the fork from the bike and turn it upside down and drain the old fluid, stroking the fork. Remove the preload collar and spring. Then stroke the damping rod and drain again. Next, install this special spacer onto the axle holder. Compress the fork fully and pour in about 500 cc of fork oil. To bleed the air from the cartridge, extend the fork tube, but not too far because of the fork seal feed hole. Seal the end of the tube with your hand and compress the fork. Then release your hand. Repeat this process several more times. This forces oil into the cartridge and around the oil seal. Adjust your fork oil level to what you have recorded in your race logbook. The compression damping adjuster works with the fork springs to affect how quickly the fork compresses. This is done by regulating the oil flow within the fork during compression. Turn the adjuster in until it seats lightly. This is the starting point for your adjustment. The adjuster is set in the standard position when it has turned out the number of clicks shown in your owner's manual. Turning the adjuster screw more than 14 clicks from full hard could damage the adjuster mechanism. Rock dings are a part of racing. The new covers have done a lot to protect the forks from rock damage. If you see a ding that you think might cause binding, you should take the fork caps off and stroke the forks through their full travel. That's the best way to tell whether your forks are binding.
Here's a couple tips while we're at the front forks. When you replace the front wheel and axle, to center it, grab the handlebars a few times and pull them up and down. This will center the wheel and axle in the front forks, reducing section.
Then tighten the front axle clamp nuts. Top ones first, then the bottom ones. This clamps the axle as rigidly as possible.
Now, the second tip has to do with the steering head bearings. While you're working on the front forks with your bike on the stand, grab the forks and pull forward and back gently. If you feel any movement there, the steering head bearings need to be adjusted. Turn the bars from side to side. They should feel smooth. If they feel tight or notchy, the bearings need to be serviced. Have your dealership technician complete the adjustment, or follow the procedure in your service manual if you're qualified.
Attention to detail is the key to staying on the track and finishing, and the proper setting and adjustment of your controls and cables is part of that attention. Use a good quality glue to attach your grips, like this Honda Line hand grip cement, and light gauge aircraft type safety wire for added security. Make sure you tuck the ends of the safety wire into the grip to prevent injury. For those handlebar to handlebar starts, your throttle cable should be safety wired like this. Clutch free play is an important adjustment on your motorcycle. Your owner's manual will tell you the specs for the free play, with adjustments made here at the mid-cable adjuster. Without the proper free play in the clutch cable, you could wear out a clutch much sooner than necessary. And don't forget to lubricate the clutch and brake pivots. If your front brake feels spongy, it may be caused by air in the hydraulic system. Use .4 brake fluid. Never mix it with .5. They're not compatible. And when you install the diaphragm in the reservoir, there shouldn't be any air under it. To bleed the air out of the system, turn the handlebars to the left to raise the master cylinder higher than the hose. Then gently tap the hose to dislodge any air bubbles in the hose. If this fails to clear the air from the system, take the master cylinder off and hold it up while tapping it to clear air from the hose.
We said earlier that paying attention to details is the key to getting ready for a race. To some, that's the obvious. But when I see guys running around with trashed equipment on their bikes, it's time to talk about the obvious. It's the little problems that can take you out of a race as fast as the big ones. If you want to win, pay attention and look for the edge. Manuals, for instance. All top riders know everything about their bikes. This is a good place to start.
If the muffler packing is not routinely changed, it may cause the muffler center pipe to break, requiring the replacement of the whole muffler.
People don't realize how easy it is to change your muffler packing. Here it is from Honda, made specifically for your CR. All you need to do is slide it into place.
The first adjustment that should be made to set your motorcycle's rear suspension is race sag, or spring preload. Setting the race sag is the first step of suspension tuning. It will help you in both spring preload and spring selection. To adjust the race sag, first put the bike on a work stand. Then measure the distance from the top of the rear fender mounting bolt to the top edge of the swing arm. Remember that this first measurement is made with the bike on the work stand, with the rear wheel off the ground. Now, take the same measurement with the bike off the stand and the rider on the motorcycle. Make sure the rider sits in the same position he rides in, not too far back. Have the rider bounce on the seat a couple of times to set the suspension into a good reference point, and measure again. Be sure not to put pressure on the fender from the tape. The race sag is the difference between the unloaded and loaded measurement. The standard race sag for all the 89 CRs is 100 millimeters, as listed in your owner's manual. But remember, this is a baseline setting that you may want to change for different track conditions.
Before you make your race sag adjustments, it's a good idea to mark the preload ring so you know how many turns you have adjusted it.
To make the adjustment, first loosen the lock nut using a punch and turn the adjuster ring to increase or decrease the race sag. Then recheck with the rider on the bike. Before setting the compression and rebound damping for the rear suspension, be sure to set the race sag or spring preload. Then turn the rebound damping adjuster clockwise until it lightly seats. The adjuster is set in its baseline position when it has been turned counterclockwise the number of turns shown in your owner's manual. Turning the adjuster in or clockwise will increase rebound damping. Turning the adjuster out or counterclockwise will decrease damping. The compression damping for the shock is adjusted here. You turn it out to decrease damping and in to increase it. Use this chart in your race logbook to help you decide which changes to make in the suspension settings. It is very important to make sure that the bearings, bushings, needle bearings, and spherical joints of the shock linkage are cleaned and lubricated after every 3 races. When lubing the linkage for pre-89 bikes, needle bearings are loose. Count the number of needles in order to replace them in their proper position. For 89 CRs, the needle bearings are held in position by a bearing retainer. Use Moly 45 paste for the lubrication and also check the linkage bolts for bending. Follow the shop manual procedure and be sure to tighten the bolts to the recommended torque.
People think carburetors are complicated, but they're not when you know how they work.
There are only 4 circuits that control the air-fuel mixture in this carb. First, you have the slow jet and air screw. These two work together to give the engine the right mixture from closed throttle to about 1/8 open. The air screw adjusts the mixture for day-to-day changes in weather. It richens the mixture when you turn it in and leans it when you turn it out. The jet needle controls the mixture from 1/8 throttle to just over 1/2 throttle. It does this in 2 stages. First, the straight section, here above the taper, controls the mixture from 1/8 to about 3/8 throttle. You can get needles with different diameters here to adjust the mixture in this throttle range. They're listed in your owner's manual as optional parts. The tapered section of the needle controls mixture from 3/8 to 3/4 throttle. You adjust mixture here by moving the clip to a different groove. The mixture is richest with the clip in the bottom groove and leanest with it in the top groove. The main jet controls the mixture from 3/4 to wide open throttle. The larger the number on the jet, the richer the mixture. Here's how this relationship looks graphically. Each of these circuits overlaps the one next to it, so that the mixture is always controlled. As the throttle is opened, each circuit works for a part of the throttle range. When adjusting your carburetor, remember that the circuit controlling the mixture is related to the throttle position, not the engine speed. Just because the engine is screaming doesn't mean that you're on the main jet. On Honda team bikes, we set the idle speed adjustment for no idle. That way, the low-speed circuit works better. Adjusting your carburetor is a matter of giving the engine the right mixture for the conditions it is working in. That's why you need to change jetting when the temperature or humidity changes. You can check the mixture in the lower throttle range right in the pits by listening to how the engine responds when you roll the throttle on. You should ride the bike to check the needle clip and main jet setting. If the engine revs cleanly as you open the throttle, the settings are okay. But if the engine doesn't respond to the throttle properly, try different settings. It's a good idea to always start by richening the mixture. That way, if you're way off, you'll only foul a spark plug and not seize a piston. Make one change at a time and then test again. Write down the changes and the results as you do these checks. It's a good idea to start with the main jet and then work your way down through the needle clip position, needle diameter, and slow jet. When you've finished and the engine is running just right, record the settings in your logbook along with a description of the weather conditions, and you'll be able to set your bike to the same settings when you return to the same track.
If you want to know more about carburetors, check this book. You can get it from your dealer. You've done a lot of preparation at the shop. You're now at the racetrack. It's time to recheck all your measurements and adjustments. One of the most important things to check is ride preload, being that the spring is brand new. Also to note is to make sure that your rider has all his riding gear on before you check the ride height.
Taking careful measurements and following your owner's manual can give you a suspension setup as good as any factory rider's. If you're racing or just riding, you should never overlook safety. What you wear is as important as what you ride in a race where dirt and rocks are flying through the air. Always wear a helmet and eye protection. That's pretty obvious, but it's equally important to wear boots and pants made for the type of riding you'll be doing. Your jerseys should be padded on the shoulders as well as the elbows, and your gloves should give you full protection without cutting down your feel for the bike. Finally, your chest protector should guard your chest, back, and shoulders in case of a spill. It's all preparation, race-ready maintenance, personal safety, and practice, practice, practice. So, good luck.